Okay, day one of this build and we're getting straight into stripping down the body. Bella's in today helping me, and we're going to take off all four wheel arches because we want to use them on the new body. Then we're going to look at getting the body off the chassis and taking the engine out. Okay, so not only is this Bella's first time working on a car, this is my real first time taking a buggy apart. So I'm just having a look around to see what I've got to do to take the body off of the floor pan. It's pretty much just going to be like a Beetle, so we're going to have to disconnect the fuel line. We've got the brake light wiring. We've got the reservoir here that goes to the master cylinder. And then obviously we've got the steering column as well, that will need to be disconnected. Then we've got all of the bolts under here, just like a Beetle. No rear body mount on a Carman gear on a beach buggy, so there's less bolts to undo. And then we've just got some wiring as well that goes to the engine. So yeah, should be pretty straightforward. So before disconnecting the brake reservoir, I want to drain the system of fluid. So I'm just opening the front bleed nipple whilst Bella pumps the brake pedal. Because it's only single circuit brakes, we don't have to do the rear separately. Next up, I'm just draining the fuel tank. I put the pipe into a container and Bella turns on the ignition to run the electric fuel pump. Next up, I'm draining the engine oil and the transmission oil so I don't have to do it when they're removed from the vehicle. So the last thing we've got to do is undo all of the bolts that hold the body down to the floor. Bella's going to jump inside with a gun and I'll go underneath. That's all the body mounting bolts removed. We're just going to whip out the seats and the rear roll bar to make it easier to lift the body off the chassis. Well, that's the body off now. We did lift it and I'd stupidly forgotten about the horn wiring, and there was a earth wire there as well. But other than that, it all came off pretty easily. So yeah, pretty happy with this. Next thing will be to remove the engine, which is super easy now. We've got access to the bell housing bolts. We've already removed the wiring and the fuel line. So we've got the throttle cable to do. And then, yeah, those 4 bolts and the whole engine should drop out.
Time to take the engine out!
Okay, so we're going to start doing some work on the chassis. We're going to fit a 5-bar Kafer brace here, and that stops wheel hop. Now wheel hop happens when you dump the clutch, particularly on higher powered vehicles, and the wheel basically judges up and down, making and breaking traction. And that happens on Volkswagens because this all flexes here. So what the brace bar does is it goes between the two shock towers at the top, triangulates down to the gearbox mount, and then triangulates down to here. And that basically stops this whole end flexing like that. So what we've got an EVA Restos heavy duty gearbox mount. We've got the Rhino mounts to go there from CB Performance. And we've got a Cool Ride Customs 5-bar kit here. So I'm going to weld all of this in. It is removable with these pins. And that will be the first thing that we do to the chassis. So here I'm just supporting the gearbox with the jack and removing the rear cradle and old rubber mounts. Then I can fit the new gearbox cradle and the Rhino mounts before welding the tabs onto this. Here's the old cradle and rubber mounts, and as you can see they're past their best. And here's the new ones installed. Next up, I need to replace the top shock mounting bolt with longer ones so I can fit the brackets for the Kafer brace. Then I can start fitting the rods into place. Okay, so I've now got this all bolted in and I've tacked the brackets in. So I've chopped up the brackets that came with the kit, just because I like to mount them slightly differently. So I'm going to weld that to the gearbox cradle. And then we've got these brackets up here, welded to the frame horns. And then I've just had to slice the top of this and bend it to make sure I could get this rod at the right angle. So now I'm going to fully weld it in. And that's the Kafer brace fully installed and welded in place. Pretty straightforward job with maximum benefit. On to the next job. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is replace this floor pan half. If it wasn't going to be a show car, this would be absolutely fine. It's solid, it's not rusty, it is beaten up. Bear in mind this buggy was used for trials and things, so it's had a bit of a hard life. Now I could have spent ages knocking out all the dents and stuff, but the weld line isn't the nicest either. So I think what I'm going to do is remove this half of the pan, and I want to keep this because this is early car specific and this is obviously a very early chassis. So I'd like to keep that feature. I'll repair these dents and yeah, we'll see how we go with that. Okay, so that is the floor pan half removed. I've cleaned up all of this edge, ready to weld the new one in. But this end piece is rotten, so we've got a rust hole there on the end. And round the front, you can see it as well. The previous person who built the buggy welded some captive nuts into here. So normally this is just a through hole, but they've welded nuts in to bolt this beam support to, and the buggy doesn't use these two bolt holes. So I quite like what he's done. I'm going to replicate this, I'll probably cut this through here and remake this whole front end piece before we can weld the new floor pan in. Okay, so as mentioned, I've got to repair this end, and the previous owners welded 2 captive nuts, so the bolts can come up from underneath to bolt this beam stiffener in place. Then I've made this section to replace it with 2 captive nuts. So I'm now going to cut that rotten bit off, fit my knee bit, and then we can get the floor pan in. And that's that repair finished. I'll have to repair the underside as well because that's rotten, but I'll do that when we flip the floor pan over. Okay, so I've just modified the new floor pan panel. I've trimmed all of the back edge off, so now we can retain this section. Obviously, that actually took us up to here, and then the floor pan was actually slightly too long. I've made a repair piece for under here because that was rotten. I've had to sort of section this area and make a bit up just to get that to flow nicely around this corner. So yeah, this is now pretty much ready to weld in. The last thing I want to do is just smooth out this pressing here, which would be for a battery tray. And then I can focus on repairing the front and we can get this floor pan fitted. So as you can see, I'm just grinding down the welding I've had to do to modify the rear edge of the floor pan. Then I can start smoothing out the pressing that I don't want to keep on the back edge of the floor and using a hammer and chisel just to finish off the last rib. Then I use thinners on a rag to clean up the whole floor pan before punching holes in the edge to plug weld it to the chassis. Okay, so that's this floor pan in. Done a seam weld across there as per factory, and then put plug welds all along here and ground them down so you can't really see them. And then yeah, left this back bit like here, just so it looks early. I'm really pleased with that feature, and we've kept this rib here as well. So yeah, pleased with how that's come out. On to the other side. As you can see, the end piece on this side is just the same, and I'll have to repair the underside when I flip the chassis over. Time to weld in the new repair piece I just made. Now I can start trimming the new floor pan half for this side. This is going much quicker because I've done it once already and figured out where I need to make the cuts. When it comes to the pressings on the back edge of the floor pan half on this one, it's a little bit more tricky. The pressing's slightly more complex and doesn't have that last rib, and as I flatten the pressing out with my hammer and dolly, it stretches the metal, so I needed to use the shrinker to shrink it back flat again. Then I can use the hole punch to prep it for plug welding in place. And that's fully welded in. Time to grind the welding down. Right, I've just got back with the trailer. Look what we've got inside. New beach buggy shell from FF Buggies. This will make life much easier going forwards. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is address the bonnet. This bonnet isn't a sidewinder bonnet. This is for, I forget what the other style of buggy's name is, but it's got a smaller dash, so just this centre section, and that's what we wanted. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit the main shell, only by a few mil really. So we're going to slice down here each side, draw it in, and hopefully get it to fit. So those two cuts have worked out quite well, both sides. The dash and bonnet is sitting down much better now. Next thing to do is the rear lights. I want to have the rear lights Frenched into the bodywork, so we had some tubes made when we had the beach buggy shell ordered. Chris is cutting the tubes into the body and fiberglassing them from the back. Then we can fit our new LED lights. So Chris, just tell me again how much you're enjoying this. So these rear lights were actually designed for motorbikes. I've got two different types. The outer ones work as the indicators, and all four will work as side lights and brake lights. Well, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. As you can see, we've made loads of progress on it, but that won't be until the next video. So if you enjoyed it, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.